Hi, my name is Patrícia Roque Martins and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Faculdade de Letras, Universidade do Porto, in Portugal. In this presentation, I will focus on my postdoctoral project with the aim to explore the way how disability was categorized through cultural heritage and its impact on cultural meanings developed around disabled people in different societies and times. I will analyze the way how disability is currently communicated, reproduced and exhibited in the Portuguese museums, highlighting the importance of disability representation for re-signifying collections. So I will start to talk about my postdoctoral project, which has the title The Representation of Disability in the General Directorate for Cultural Heritage Museums Collections, Discourses, Identities and Sense of Belonging. I've been developing this project since 2015 and I will finish in 2022 with the support of FCT, the Portuguese National Funding Agency for Science, Research and Technology. This project has been conducted by three main questions, such what functions can museums play in their access policies that problematize the identities generated around disabled people over time? What dynamics are involved in museums' policies for representing disability and how can they contribute to the production of the social meaning of disability? And what is the potential of collections to foster new thoughts about disability and how can museums can value them for the public benefit? First of all, let me explain what is the General Directorate for Cultural Heritage that I will abbreviate to DGPC. This is an institution under the administration of the Portuguese state, being responsible for managing the cultural heritage in Portugal and for developing and implementing museums' national policy. DGPC is in charge of managing 15 national museums located in different areas of the country with collections of different origins, periods of time and themes. Thus, this research focuses on the study of these 15 museums with collections ranging from the prehistory to contemporary times, covering different areas such as archaeology, ethnography, furniture, design, painting, sculpture, photography, musical instruments, and documents. To get to know the objects of the collections linking to disability, one of the resources I used was the MatrizNet website, which is one of the largest information repositories on the collections of Portuguese museums. I started by introducing into the search engine several words related to the topic of disability with the aim of discover objects that had the same connections with those words such as blind, disabled, wheelchair, deaf, but few objects were revealed. So it was necessary to expand the vocabulary to be introduced in the search engine. I used derogatory and outdated words about disability in order to identify the largest possible number of objects related with disability. I introduced words such as dwarf, wooden leg, bigger, mentally retarded, crippled, and these words ended up revealing objects relating to disability. This research allowed some objects from the collections of the DGPC museums related to disability to become known, which appear in diversely natured collections and varied chronological periods. Nevertheless, they suggest new relationships, forming new meanings and possibilities for interpreting disability in museums. I will going to show some of that objects which I think deserve to be mentioned for their pertinence as an integral part of the cultural circuit in the way it was and is socially accepted to represent, interpret, and exhibit disability in museums. The Museu Nacional de Arqueologia has a set of objects in its collection representing a very popular figure in ancient Egypt, the god Bes, personified by a man of small stature. In general, the interpretation produced about these objects in the inventory texts published on the MatrizNet website highlights aspects related to the difference of a disabled body using verbal descriptions such as dwarf figure, typical dwarf pose with short arched legs, demonstrating how disability is typified in the written texts of museums. Another object in the collection of this museum is the statuette of Vulcan from the 1st century AD that represents a god popularly known for the deformity of his legs, who, according to tradition, held the office of craftsman, blacksmith, and goldsmith. Although his disability contributed to his popularity and, in fact, to delineate a life story linked to the abandonment of his own parents and wife, and even being present in its visual representation, the relationship between the object and the disability is not mentioned anywhere in the inventory descriptive text. This omission ends up having a negative impact on disability culture, contributing to erase an identity and a memory, disconstructing and invalidating it. In other cases, disability is directly related to begging in the descriptive text of the MatrizNet inventory, although this action is not always explicit in the visual language of the objects. For example, the 18th century tile from the collection of the Museu Nacional do Azulejo, a male figure appears with amputated arm and leg, which in no way resembles the typical figure of a beggar by the way he wears period costumes and presents himself in a frontal pose. The relationship with begging is established by the verbal language of the inventory descriptive text, stating that the person is perhaps a beggar. In the painting San Martin and the Poor from 1540 AD to 1550 AD, from the collection of the Museu Grão Vasco, it presents a person with an amputated leg called a beggar, who, without clothes, is covered by the mantle of the Saint Martin in an act of charity. The words poor and beggar, used in the title and the description of the object, are clearly associated with the condition of disability, although they also serve to overshadow it. In this case, it will be useful to consider which of the conditions happened first. Did the beggar become poor through disability, or did poverty lead him to become disabled? In the Museu Nacional do Teatro, the inventory descriptive text of the photograph José Carlos dos Santos actor expressed the conviction that the exclusion from the work world is inherent to the very condition of disability. The object's description provides some biographical data about the actor, stating that after becoming blind, the actor entered retirement. In another photography of an actor on stage, Canto e Castro in Divine Words, the inventory language written reinforced the visual language of the object. The character is lying on a wooden structure, his legs are bent at the knees in an human attitude. The descriptive text says that photograph is of the actor Canto e Castro imitating the mentally retarded Laureano, thus demonstrating that the names used to express disability are, in many cases, already out-of-date and even offensive within current disability context. Another object, with an equally pejorative title are the Little Cripples Begging of the Museu Nacional de Etnologia Collection. Additionally, the names used in the descriptive text of the inventory to describe the two men with amputated legs reinforce the negative title, saying that they are two anthropomorphic figures. Other objects allow particular relationships with the material culture of disability, having been used by disabled people or created specifically for them, contributing to better understand the culture and identity of this group. Some of these objects that have no apparent relation to disability end up telling stories about the life experience of disabled people, generating ideas about their social customs. For example, the accordion is a musical instrument present in some objects in the collection of the DGPC Museum, such as in paintings, sculptures, or the instrument itself, such as this example of the Museu Nacional da Música. This musical instrument is often associated with disabled people and is also considered in the descriptive text of the inventory as a musical instrument that is socially demoted for its function of supporting them in the act of begging. These objects are very explicit examples of how disabled people were represented by stereotypes. If, on the one hand, the visual language of the objects sought to provoke certain emotional reactions in this audience, on the other hand, the textual language developed by museums professionals in the inventory descriptions naturalize and reinforce these negative messages, having a consequence on the cultural significance of disability. According to all, the process of representing the other is formed by the shared values of the language created through concepts, images, ideas, or feelings, leading to the production of meaning in a given space and time. This meaning will act as an integral part of the cultural circuit, regulating behaviors, building and defining the identities, and the means by which certain subjects are transmitted, represented, or practiced. In the case of disability, the collective identity is not built autonomously by disabled people themselves. On the contrary, their collective identity is defined by the social collective of the non-disabled people framed in the representational system of meaning developed about the other based on the negative aspects of the difference. Disabled people have not actively participated in the creative process of their own identity and communication. Therefore, the identity of disabled people is in fact a non-identity. As far as museums are concerned, this idea leads to question their role in creating social identities and dominant narratives in a given space, time, and place through their policies and practices of inventorying, exhibiting, and creating pedagogical repertoires. In this sense, we can consider that the narratives of disability currently exist in DGPC museums fit within the modern authoritarian museum, recognizing and affirming some identities and omitting others, forming knowledge and disciplining social and cultural practices to exhibit disability. So we may say that the representation of disability in these museums is predominantly negative, being the result of the cultural heritage of the people who produced it. Therefore, they reinforce the theories of some authors, such as Levine and Karp, who consider that the institutional narratives of museums are not neutral, having the purpose of emphasizing and minimizing certain elements, affirming certain truths, and exclude others. Added to this problem is the way in which disability is being addressed in the scientific field. Until recently, the study of disability was dominated by the science of medicine, psychology, education, and social policy. They are all important, but they are only one side of the coin. Only since the 21st century that the disability arena has been the object of study by several academics in the social and human science, contributing to a more comprehensive understanding of this subject in society through disciplines which apparently have nothing to do with the theme, such as philosophy, history, art history, anthropology, ethnology, religious studies, social communication, and museology, among others. Recently, Waldo Schmidt arguing the need to develop a cultural model of disability, proposing a change of focus in the analysis of disability. Thus, this model affirms the relevance of culture as an analytical category for the study of disability, offering essential knowledge about the legacies, trajectories, change in society and culture, and the interactions between normality and disability. It considers intersectionality, linking itself to other experiences of marginality. Equally, it considers disability not only as a personal tragedy, as in the medical model of disability, nor only as an effect of discrimination and exclusion, as in the social model of disability, recognizing that disability is social and culturally constructed. Thus, the development of the new cultural model of disability gives to museology an opportunity to contribute to disability. The professional policies and practices of inventorying, exhibiting, and creating pedagogical repertories, producing knowledge about objects and collections are strategies for destabilizing the dominant narratives of disability in museums, rejecting negative stereotypes, shelling the concept of normality, and promoting pride on disability identity. And this approach fits in the idea of the postmodern museum, critical, political, and activist, with the potential to develop innovative ways of addressing the social disqualification that arose around disability. In this sense, disability can bring new possibilities to museology. In fact, disability representations are powerful testimonies of the way how disabilities was interpreted in the past, ligature to the present and future for its ability to reflect on current issues. Disability representations are therefore a source of knowledge, inspiration, and pride, creating opportunities for museums to diversify their audiences and the stories they present. They may empower museum audiences, bringing disabled people together, exploring issues of place and identity that matter to them. And finally, they create opportunities for museums to renew their exhibitions, interpretive texts, and language. These updates can be generated from co-productive projects developed with disabled people, generating critical and innovative public reinterpretations about collections. Additionally, disability representation can be a path to a new access definition. In 1998, an article was published in the Curator Journal by Majewski and Bunch defining three levels of access to the museum. The first referred to physical access to the exhibition space. The second considers sensorial and intellectual access to the content of the exhibitions. The third considers the representation of disabled people and disability-related themes in the narratives of presentations of the exhibitions. This last level would necessarily involve an understanding of the history of disability, culture and art, as well as the presentation of multiple life experiences. Currently, some projects developed by academics, professionals, and disability activists have problematized the concept museums access, contexted the standards and the practices developed around these accessibility issues, attempting to guarantee more frequent access to the public history of disability and to the creative work of disabled artists and curators. Like, for example, the curatorial work of Amanda Kasia, which seeks to incorporate cultural elements of disability into the concept and structure of contemporary exhibitions, or the work of Carmen Papalia, who questions traditional accessibility initiatives in museums using strategies, usually formative, performative, to address his understanding of access to public space, the art institution, and visual culture. So, to conclude, I would like to invite all participants of the International Conference on the Inclusive Museum to ask yourself why have the access to public stories of disability and the creative work of disabled artists and curators being denied, and why have this part of our shared story, identity and culture being hidden. Thank you.